Yeah, so I'm writing an article right now in partnership with iWave. The article is all about the generosity crisis and this decline in giving that we're seeing across the sector. And that's very real, but I think that's a call to action for us to get creative and innovative about the way that we engage people. It's a call to action for us to become dedicated to investing in our fundraising and not just sort of being okay with the status quo.
Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. I am so excited for today's podcast, part 3 of our interview with research pro Regina Alhassan. In this episode, we're going to get really down to brass tacks on some very practical issues that will be helpful to any nonprofit leader when it comes to understanding the wealth capacity of their constituents and how to tackle problems all of us face in that process. What do you do with board members who seem to be giving less than they could? Why do some donors hide their wealth, and what does that mean? If you can't afford a wealth screening, how do you still identify wealthy donors? And if all you have are email addresses, how can you get physical addresses to help you screen those donors? If you love getting practical answers to practical problems all fundraisers face, you're going to love this episode. And if you do find this episode helpful, please help us get the word out. Subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. And don't forget to share this episode on social media. Let's get on with the show. I know there's some folks who are skeptical of wealth screening tools.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that sometimes they really do miss? What are the factors that might cause them to overlook a donor's giving potential?
Yeah. So they definitely we overlook some people because it's data. It's data points. It's AI, it's machine learning, it's just data points that line up in a certain way or they don't. And so that's what a wealth screening does for you, especially if you do a batch screening and you're screening your entire database at once. It's a matching of data points. And so that's an imperfect science. It is a valuable science and it's a valuable exercise nonetheless, but you should not do it thinking that everything is 100% infallible. That's a false expectation. What it does allow you to do is figure out the buckets, the larger buckets and the larger categories of, is this a $50,000 donor? Is this $1 million donor? Or is this a $5 donor or a $500 donor? And then it allows you to be able to be strategic about how you engage them, especially if you are, if you're just one person, you can't manage all relationships in the same way.
Right.
So you have to get some strategy behind it, and it helps you build out that strategy. So there will be things that we miss, especially when we are within our industry. We continue to talk about this and find new ways to prospect. But a lot of the prospecting is driven by wealth analysis, which is driven by property assets.
Mm-hmm.
And so depending on where your property is located, which zip code you live in, that will impact your wealth rating. For some donors, especially like BIPOC donors that don't typically live in highly valued zip codes, and that's a result of historic redlining and other forms of racism and discrimination in the United States. So then their property values don't always add up to the same value as other zip codes. And so if you rely only on that, then you will miss out on people. If you are not intentional about prospecting in a larger base of zip codes, you will miss out on prospects. So there are, it's an imperfect science, but it's a necessary science, and it relies heavily on the individual. You can't escape the human touch.
Hmm.
So the data can help you figure out which human needs your touch, but you still need to apply the human touch to qualify and fully round out that relationship.
That's great advice. I think about when we used to work together at OSU, especially when I was at the dental school. I was doing a lot of prospecting work, a lot of qualification work, and I would often be qualifying folks, and then the prospect management folks would come back to me and say, well, Regina's stuff didn't say that they were that wealthy, and I'd have to come back to him and say, well, yeah, but I had a conversation with them, and I know they own multiple businesses, and they told me they could be open to the idea of doing a $25,000 or $50,000 gift, or I know they have a vacation property in Telluride, or any number of things that maybe just didn't hit wealth screening, but you don't know unless you actually have a conversation with the person.
Absolutely. And so that brings up a great point. People that have assets and people that have wealth like to hide their wealth and assets. And so, yes, I think as fundraisers, we need to get over this notion of, am I going to miss something? Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Accept that you are, which is why you need the human touch so you can flesh out all those
Yeah.
missing pieces of information. And so we saw this many, many times, countless times at the university. Here's a list of people that have this minimum capacity. We know they could at least do 50. So they're in your prospect pool. And then you go and actually have a conversation with the person, and within like a 30-minute conversation, you uncover their relatives, their
Hmm.
family structure. Do they have
Yep.
children in private school? Do they have children in, higher in college somewhere? Are they paying for that? Are they going through a divorce? Are they launching a new business? Do they have vacation homes somewhere else? Do they have a vacation home in another country that we might not find using the tools that we have available to us?
Yes.
All of those insights come out naturally in a conversation, and it supplements what we find within the data.
That reminds me of a dentist that I knew, and he was an Appalachian dentist, and that was his home, town, home area, and it became very obvious that A, the individual had a lot of money, but B, that really went to considerable uh, he went through a considerable effort to hide that
Mhm.
wealth, because he didn't want people to feel like he was taking advantage of them as a dentist. First off, you charge somebody 600, well, actually a lot more now, probably $1,000 for a crown, and they see you're driving you've got a brand new BMW out front. They start asking questions. They might feel bad about it. If you've got a beat up F-150 sitting out front, nobody's going to think anything of that necessarily, because it's like, oh, he's one of us. But this individual, he had planes and had multiple businesses, lots of real estate, lots of things, and people knew he was well off. But you could tell that he really wanted to be modest about
Yeah.
that wealth, because of public perception and just the optics of it.
Yeah.
So, it,
Yeah.
it really fleshes out what you're saying. I used to see all the time as a fundraiser.
Yeah. You're exactly right. It makes me think of that phrase, the millionaire next door. And it's
Hmm.
it's so common. And I don't know if that's just a regional phenomenon here in Ohio, but you're absolutely right. And that is the greatest wealth indicator for me. So you asked this question in a different way a little bit earlier. But when I am doing research, individual research on someone, and I uncover that they're hiding wealth, and it's like, oh, I know you're hiding it. I have proof that you're hiding it. That to me I almost want to double their capacity, their estimated capacity, because
That's
that's a
fair.
huge indicator. You have something to hide, and you're savvy enough to be thoughtful. So I'm going to go. I'm going to have these steps in place so
Yeah.
that it can't be found. And then it just makes me wonder, like, well, what else is there? And so, a
Yeah.
common way that people hide wealth that I've seen is like they'll have a holding company. And so my name is Regina K. Alhassan. So if I'm hiding wealth, the way that I would do that is to create a holding company, an LLC called RKA Holdings
Yes.
LLC. And
Yes.
then I'll dump all of my property, all of my businesses, all of my other assets under that umbrella. And I'll have, I'll hire someone, I'll use a PO box, I'll hire someone to file the registration with the state, I'll hire some company, so it will never be attached to Regina Alhassan in any way.
Hmm.
Except usually there's like one little breadcrumb
Right.
that I can
Right.
find. And once I find it, then it's like, aha, that's where they're hiding it. And that's why we don't find it in the wealth screen, because it's not attached to their individual name. It's not attached to a property that they own. It's attached to this P.O. box. But then that goes back to the value of investing in prospect development and having someone that knows how to do the research, knows how to look for those type of breadcrumbs so that they can uncover them.
Yeah. No, that I love how you just kind of traced out how that works and what you do, as you're trying to connect those dots. I do want to add though, because sometimes when we talk about people, quote unquote, hiding wealth,
Mm-hmm.
it can almost feel like, well, they're trying to be sneaky or they're trying to do something surreptitious. And I guess it's just really important to acknowledge that. Uh, as much as we would all love to have the problem of being, uber wealthy, problems do come with being publicly known as a wealthy individual. You get lots of people trying to use you. You get lots of people, to the extent that your data is public out there, wanting to leverage that somehow to get something from you. And even just with family members, you may even have family members treat you differently or neighbors treat you differently. And a lot of folks that I've met over the years, uh, they're just people, and they want people to treat them like people, and not as a bank vault
Yeah.
or someone to be used. And I think for a lot of folks, that's what really motivates the hiding of the wealth, because they just want to be private, and they want the people in their life, the people in their church or their temple or mosque. They want those folks to just relate to them as another person and appreciate them for who they are rather than what can be gotten from them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the hiding wealth, that language really is like fundraising lingo. That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the researcher lingo of, that's our jobs all day, every day, is to find these
Hmm.
assets. And so when you're doing that, in some ways it can become a bit of a hunt, especially when you have this sort of, and this happens a lot, this gut instinct of like, no, I know it's more there. I know it's not just this $200 lifetime giving total. I know it's more there. There are some other indicators, and sometimes it's just a gut instinct. And so then that's where we get into that sort of insider lingo of they're hiding it. No, they don't know us. They're not hiding it from me.
Right.
They may not even be hiding it, like you said, in a way to be deceitful or misleading, but just because it's their personal business. And
Hmm.
that's how they choose to manage their assets responsibly.
Tom Dauber here for Abundant Vision Academy. Are you a nonprofit leader who's new to fundraising? Are you feeling crushed by your fundraising goals and not sure how to find success? My online class, crafted from my 25 years of experience and more than 5,000 donor meetings, Abundant Vision Academy will give you the confidence and understanding you need to start building relationships with donors and having gift discussions in just 110 minutes. You'll get 14 videos covering all the topics you need to find success in fundraising. You can take it at your own pace and can watch as many times as you'd like. This is one of the best deals in fundraising continuing education you can get today. To make sure you get off to a strong start in 2024, I'm offering a 50% discount to anyone signing up for my course this spring. That's a $375 value. Enter the coupon code SPRING2024 at checkout to claim your 50% discount. That's SPRING 2024. Head on over to thomas-dauber-s-school.teachable.com and click on Abundant Vision Academy to get your discount today. The link is in the podcast description. Do you have any examples where you could share where wealth screening really uncovered something important that ended up leading to a large gift for one of your clients?
Yeah. So that tale of two fundraisers that I shared earlier, but then also just in my entire career, I've used wealth screening, and I can't speak enough to the power of conducting a wealth screening. And so I'll share this example, this fact. So we know that for every donor, you need at least 5 to 10 prospects. And so with that in mind, it's like, where are you going to get those prospects? How
Yep.
do you know who is the right prospect? And so that's where the power of wealth screening comes into play. And certainly we have those stories of this is another story comes to mind. So working with an organization a couple of years ago, a smaller statewide organization that's like in the environmental space.
Mm-hmm.
So they went into the organization, and they felt like most organizations do, most fundraisers do. Oh, we know our board. I know my board. I know their capacity. They're giving all that they can. Okay, that's great. Let's just wealth screen the board and let's see. you know, Based on their database and their projections and their cultivation, maybe the board had a total of $150,000 to $200,000 in giving capacity. That's what was the total board goal. We do the wealth analysis and determine, oh no, your board really has more like $3 to $4 million in giving capacity. So not to say that everyone on the board is going to change their giving and step up to their full giving capacity, but no, now you have the facts that no, they do have the ability to give more, and they are already engaged in philanthropy at this level. You're just not asking them to engage, even though they're sitting on your board. And so then that gives people, it's like you can't unknow that. Once you have the facts, it's really helpful to be armed with the facts. And then it helps you create more strategic conversation and have more meaningful conversations about how to move people towards their true capacity. It's not a guarantee, but at least you know.
Yeah, I can tell you, I've had a number of very helpful conversations um, with board members, volunteers, whom I had discovered that they gave substantially more to other organizations, and I think as long as you stay in a place of curiosity
Mhm.
and you ask permission to have the conversation, people will talk to you. I've said to folks, "Hey, I notice, you support this other organization very generously, and in fact, more than us. We understand that, we're not everybody's cup of tea, and some organizations have missions that are going to be more appealing to some donors. Tell us how you think about us compared to them. Are we? Do you feel like we do as good of a job in terms of reporting back to you? Do you feel like we're a good investment? What are the differences there for you?" And you can just learn so much in having those sorts of conversations, but you can't really have those conversations if you haven't done the research
Yeah,
to know what your people are doing.
exactly. Exactly.
So, you know, as we come to the end of 2023 and you're looking across the fundraising landscape. You've got a, I'm sure your pulse, you've got your finger on the pulse of the profession. Are there any trends you see emerging?
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm writing an article right now in partnership with iWave. And the article is all about the generosity crisis and this
Hmm.
decline in giving that we're seeing across the sector. Um, and that's very real, but I think that's a call to action for us to get creative and innovative about the way that we engage people. It's a call to action for us to become dedicated to investing in our fundraising
Hmm.
and not just sort of being okay with the status quo, being okay with not having a database, being okay with I mean, so it's hard to get donors when you don't have a database. And
Yeah.
I've come across nonprofit leaders that don't quite understand that.
Yes.
It's like, oh, but do I really need that? Yes, you do. Well, why do
Hmm.
I need that database to ask this person for money? Because it's not just about this one person. It's about your entire system. It's about the way that you manage your relationships and are able to steward that donor, and not just one donor, but an entire universe of donors. And so it's a call to action for us to invest in fundraising and resource development. And it's also a call to action for us to be very creative about the prospects that we bring to the table. We can't keep relying on high net worth individuals that rate the highest in the wealth screening. We have to go to that next tier, those lower tiers, and figure out what do those people care about. What are they willing to support? How can we support them in their journey, so as they continue to grow and continue to grow their wealth, they will then continue to sow into our organization. So it's a different paradigm, I think, for a lot of nonprofit organizations. But that the generosity crisis is real, the decline in giving is real. And so we have to become much more strategic and more intentional about the way that we engage stakeholders.
When you see those trends, and you mentioned a few things, are there other trends, and if not, it's okay, that concern you? And are there trends that you're getting excited about?
Yeah. So the ones that excite me, so the decline in giving concerns me, but the ones that excite me is this growth in online giving. And this growth in using social media for fundraising. So
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember when just maybe about 5 years ago or so, when organizations were still debating, like, should we have a Facebook account? Should we get on Twitter? And now to move to a place where online giving, I think, is or social media giving reached 10% of total
Wow.
giving. And
Wow.
so it's like now in the double digits, whereas before it was the single digits. And so that's not going away. The web-based engagement is not going away, most especially in the age of AI. And so leaning into that and knowing that that's a space for growth and opportunity is really exciting to me.
Hmm. You know, one thing I'm running into I'm talking to nonprofit leaders with younger organizations. Some of them are startups. Um, some of them don't have address based information at all.
Hmm.
All they have is their Facebook or Instagram following and some email addresses.
Yeah.
How if you're that organization, how do you go about doing research if all you've got's an email address?
Yeah, so it's very difficult. It's not completely impossible, but it's very difficult and it's expensive. And
Mm,
so then that does become a bigger shot in the dark. So
yeah.
there are opportunities, there are different platforms you can use to like try to scrape the web, and based on the email address, it will aggregate who that email address likely belongs to.
Hmm.
But that is, again, a bigger shot in the dark. Rather than taking that approach, I would encourage organizations to be strategic about how to move them from the email to getting the data.
Okay.
So if you have their email address, some type of outreach, some type of information campaign where you are specifically asking for that additional information, and be clear about why you need it. You need it because you want to share the impact story. You need it because you want to stay in touch. But be very clear about, we love that you connected with us here, but we want to be real friends. Fill out this quick profile information. It doesn't have to be hard.
Do you have any examples of clients, anonymous, obviously, but who have done that very thing with some
Yeah.
success, and what their reason for wanting to collect the address was?
Yeah, so absolutely. I worked with an organization here in Ohio, and they were getting like donations through Amazon Smiles.
Mm-hmm.
So you give some money or you round up or whatever. So they only had the email address.
Yeah.
And so they did an email campaign. Thanks for your donation. We want to keep you in our circle. Will you provide your full contact information? It was just that simple.
Yeah.
And some people did, some people did not. But then for the people that did, so
Mm,
now we're building that prospect journey.
right.
We're qualifying. They're checking off some prospect boxes. They've given. You have their email. You sent them a call to action that they actually responded to, and they did what you wanted them to. These are all like qualifiers. So now let's continue to engage them. Did you share an impact story? Did you invite them to engage in something? Are you contacting them at least once a month with something?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is the prospect journey. And that's the cultivation journey. And so this idea of, are we going to miss something? Or are we going to leave someone out? Is someone going to not respond? All of these what ifs, that's part of it. And yes, those what ifs will happen. We need them to happen. We need people to disqualify themselves so that we can focus on those that do self-qualify and self-identify.
No, that's a great story, and that's great advice. Well, Regina, you have been so helpful. So much great information in this interview. I couldn't be more grateful. Thank you so much for coming on with us today. I'd love to have you on again sometime, as I'm sure we'll have uh, a lot more opportunity to hear about the importance of what's going on with, especially with some of these trends you're seeing. I hope you'll come back again.
Absolutely, anytime.
Wonderful. As always, I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together toward major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.